Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is Game 11 from the 2014 World Chess Championship match between Magnus Carlsen and Viswanathan. Going into this game, Carlsen has a 5.5 to 4.5 lead in this race to 6.5 points to determine a world champion. And Carlsen with the white pieces in this one, he opened with e4. We once again revisit the Berlin defense in this match, the one where the queens are off the board. Black has the bishop pair, and black has an uncastled king and a damaged queenside pawn structure. We've seen this in Game 7, which was a very lengthy game, 6.5 hours, and we've also seen this in Game 9, which lasted just about 1 hour. In both of those games, we saw h3 as the follow-up, and then king to e8. This is, however, where things are different. Instead of king e8, Black decides on bishop d7, which is a tell that this king is looking to reside on the queen side of the board. King c8, b6, and soon enough king b7. So that's the direction Black goes in. Knight c3, h6. In games 7 and 9, we had this h-pawn playing up to h5. By playing just one step here, the main aim is to keep control over the g5 square. There will be no worry of bishop g5 or knight g5. b3, preparing to fianchetto the bishop. King c8, bishop b2. c5, very useful move. Gives this square, or opens up the square for the light square bishop. There are also ideas of one-day pressing with c4, looking to exchange this doubled pawn for a perfectly healthy b pawn. Rook a to d1, b6, and now rook f to e1. I think this is already an important point in the game. One might want to improve the knight position in this case here, but I don't believe that that would be a good choice here. Let me point out an idea that's present for the black side. If on this move 14, white is going for knight d5, notice how a5 can be played. And as white, you want to make sure that this pawn is not allowed to get to a4. And so if you're playing a4 yourself, now notice how there is an additional move in mind for the black side, namely c4. a4 is no longer defended as soon as the rook is pulled off of d1. So this is an interesting way that the queenside pawn structure can change in a way that benefits black, I believe. You insert this a5 move, you're looking to get to a4 and open up the a-file. If white wants to interfere there with that, with a4, well, he's a potential target. c4 is a very good move. So it's important to realize this idea here, this transformation on the queen side, the pawn structure, and instead rook f to e1. If a5, simply a4, there is no c4 in this case, the knight still has a close eye on the a4 pawn. So after rook f to e1, we have as a follow-up bishop to e6. Now knight to d5. Any a5 will be met with a4. We do see that happen in the game. But first it's g5. This is doing what exactly? Well, it's securing this beautiful bishop on e6. How exactly to get rid of this guy? The pawn watches over f4. What does this no longer do? No longer watches over f6. So now this is a optically good square, but objectively not doing so much. A knight on this f6 square after g5, if the knight is jumping in here, he's kind of throwing punches into thin air. He's not really hitting anything. Nice post, he can't be kicked away by any of the black pawns clearly, but what is he really doing? Not so much. So this is a very useful move. Stop knight f4, which would eliminate that strong minor piece. Black's, we can say, best piece in this position. Can't get rid of this guy. Well, what does that mean? That means, for one, you won't be able to enter on the 7th rank, and two, this pawn will never be able to move, and this bishop, as it stands right now, is kind of biting on a rock, not really doing so much in the position. So g5, very good move, watching over f4, c4 is in, anchoring that knight into d5. He basically cannot be captured now. Any capture of the knight, this is too much, too excellent pawn breaks available for white, d6 or e6. So he's basically screwed right into that d5 square. King b7, King h2, this was interesting to see during the live stream. King h2, at this point I was thinking, how exactly to do improve? Do you play g4 and try to get in king g2 to g3? Well, white is taking a similar approach, but changing the move order. Notice, if this is the end result that you would like to have for white, to have a pawn on g4 and then slowly improve your king position, notice how by playing king here first, you're making a less committal move first. That's usually a good strategy if you're questioning the move order or have two particular moves in mind. Make the non-committal move first. g4 is the more committal move without question, a very weakening move. Just like g5 is very weakening to these four squares, so too would g4 be to these squares on the white side. So it's king h2 for starters. As a follow-up, a5, and sure enough, a4. Knight e7, anticipating that he's going to be kicked anyway, so he looks to reposition somewhere else. These are two interesting options. g4 was played. I thought that there was a reason to not pull the trigger on this move so quickly, because this knight could maybe pounce into these two weakened squares, but white still goes for that. g4 is on board. Knight g6, king g3, bishop e7. Now this was quite interesting. Not always the case. You want to allow a knight to pick up your bishop, but in this case, black is viewing it as, well, this knight, he's really much better than my bishop, and also, with this move, black does not want to allow white some opportunity to, let's say, break down at this g5 pawn. If it can happen where, let's say, just making a passing move here, let me just back up at this point right here. If black makes a passing move, just to illustrate my point, if this structure is allowed, a G, F, and E pawn versus these two split pawns, white's going to be able to race this guy all the way up to F5 and eliminate what? Black's best minor piece. That's how H4 can impact this position. As indirect as it may seem, H4 may very well be influencing the bishop on the E6 square. Bishop E7 interferes with this idea, in short. It interferes with this idea to play H4. If knight takes bishop, knight takes knight, and white tries for H4, white is going to come under some heavy fire. In what way exactly? Well, after G takes H, knight takes H, yes, these pawns are split, but who's the side who would be more tactically vulnerable? Clearly it's white. After F3, there's H5. After, let's say, rook E4 takes, now it's white's pawns who are split. White doesn't have an F pawn. There's no fear of this bishop being kicked away. He remains an excellent piece. The short story here again is that H4 is basically prevented with black's last move, bishop to E7. White doesn't take him out and instead goes for something else. Looks to reposition the knight on D2. Rook on H to D8. Knight E4. Looking at that F6 square, looking to reinforce this knight on D5. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice here. It's been a long couple of weeks. As a follow-up, we have bishop to F8, knight F6, and now this stunning move. There were some relay issues when I was doing the live stream, and this was right around the time that B5 was played. What a shocking move. It's a move that you could be absolutely blind to, right? There's two different pawns that could take that guy right out. He's not taken. The move that was played is bishop C3. Why isn't white capturing with A takes B? Well, that allows for A4. B takes A, rook takes A. C4's hit. What are you doing? Defending? You're crawling up into a ball now. And this bishop has prospects of crashing through on the C4 pawn, right? You could have bishop E7, him returning here to undermine basically the D5 pawn, or the D5 knight, getting rid of a defender of that square with bishop E7. A knight takes bishop, knight takes knight. What are you doing to defend this pawn? It's not a great way to do that. Black, in short, would have a lot of pressure if A takes B is on board. What about C takes B? Well, there's this cool move C6. Don't forget about this king playing a very active role. After B takes C, king takes C, what are you doing to secure your central knight? One attacker, two, three. Rook b8 around the corner to pressure b3. Too much pressure, too much activity would be allowed if white is going for either capture. So instead, bishop c3, allowing b takes a, so now there's some serious weaknesses over here on the queen side. A lot of isolated pawns. Bishop has a direct side of a5. The rook is tethered to its defense. King c6, getting out of any rook checks and adding pressure to d5. That's the main intention. It's a lot of pressure on that point, and white needs to be very careful. 1, 2, 3 pieces defending. Does white have enough defenders? He does, with 1, 2, and 3. So that means that this rook is not so easily, well, he cannot easily come over to the b1 square. He has a job right now to watch over the knight, a knight who can still be undermined further indirectly by this bishop on f8, by way of bishop g7, or even bishop to e6, getting rid of one of the defenders of the d5 knight. So following up, we have king f3. He's now looking to play an active role. What a very fighting game this has been. We had play on both sides of the board here, clearly in the center, clearly on the king side with king h2, g4, king g3 looking for h4, which was shut down. On the black side, certainly some action over here on the b file, with the b5, the b file now being completely opened. A lot of interesting possibilities here. We have the move played rook d to b8. This is actually giving up a little bit of an advantage here. There was a better move for the black side here. In fact, the computer likes the black side with bishop e7, looking to do what? Crash through on d5 so that this bishop has direct sight of c4. Bishop e7, however, was not played. If bishop e7 was on board, what would be the follow-up? There's a couple moves, knight e3, or even, let's say, following through with king e4. What's wrong with king e4? There's bishop takes knight, pawn takes, bishop takes knight, c takes, and king d6. This is a stable square for the king. This pawn needs some attention, needs some defense. Knight f4 is not long off, I should say, from adding more pressure to that pawn. This might be a very good structural shift for black. Not a direction he went in, however, with bishop e7. Instead, rook d to b8 occupying the only open file. Looking at rook b3, placing the bishop in a pin, having a close eye on h3, maybe even rook a3, getting into that a4 pawn. King e4, rook b3 was not played. Is this a mouse slip? It is not. Rook b4 is on the board, and black is really going all out, allowing this exchange sacrifice, getting what for it? Bishop takes rook, pawn takes, connected passed pawns. Can black push through successfully with this? Notice also there's a new square for that bishop to finally get to on that c5 square. I don't know how great a threat it would be to this pawn, but it's a new square that's available for both bishop and even the king. If you're questioning at all, why not take towards the center? Well, yes, he's still a passed pawn. He's a connected passed pawn, but there's one less square for black to work with. Certainly won't have the king or bishop play here. And white also has a passed pawn as well. Not sure if coming over here is the best, but he's capturing away from the center, opening up this square, not even allowing white to think about having a passed pawn himself. So what followed was knight h5. This is paving the way for f4 and then f5, something that black certainly cannot allow a pawn to get into there. So he'll be quick to just take him right out. King to b7, getting ready to give that knight a kick, or in some variations, getting ready to do what? Capture on c4. Let me point out this interesting move here. Suppose rook to b8, making a passing move. After f4, takes, knight takes is not a good idea. After knight takes here, bishop takes pawn would not be a good idea because of rook c1. And on king to c5, there's knight d3 check, and, well, at the end of it, you're dropping the bishop. My main point here of emphasis is that king to b7 is now going to allow, in this upcoming variation, for the bishop to pick up the pawn on c4, and as a result, it won't then be met with a pin after rook c1. The king is getting off of the same file as the bishop by playing to b7. we do have that take shape. After king b7, we do in fact have f4, g takes f, knight takes, and I was thinking during the game that the king needed to take, but instead the knight takes, allowing this pawn to be picked up. There is no rook c1 now to place that bishop in a pin. King b7 is on the board. But what does white do? Gets to the 7th rank. Initially I thought, what exactly is this doing? It's attacking a pawn that's clearly defended. Black now has these two connected passed pawns. It does take a while for this guy to get rolling, but if white is not careful, these guys can get rolling, and we know how devastating two pawns on, let's say, the 3rd rank can be. They're often better than a full rook. Can they get advancing? As a follow-up, after rook d7, we have rook a6, anticipating more pressure against c7 and wanting the rook to play an active role in defending the c7 pawn, playing into c6 here, instead of basically crawling up into a ball on c8 to defend. He wants this active defense, rook to c6. Knight d5 is on board, doing more than one thing. Initially I saw it as, okay, you're hitting at c7, but what else are you doing after knight d5? You're interfering with the bishop's communication with f7. Rook c6 has been played, rook takes pawn, and now this is a passed pawn. The rook is super active, hitting the bishop, who now posts up to c5. Rook takes c7 as the follow-up. This is getting very simplified. Rook takes pawn, rook takes, knight takes, and what do you do here as black? If you take the knight, there's some serious problem. It's very clear win. Rook c1. One of these guys is going to fall. There's no time for b3. We grab this bishop b2. Under different circumstances, this pawn is going to push through, but not here. Another piece falls, and then the rook is able to get right behind the pawn just in the nick of time. Therefore, taking the knight, not a good choice. Instead, what was tried is king c6, knight b5, bishop takes, knight takes, king takes pawn, and now we have these two guys connected. This guy is passed, and with the correct preparation, these guys will also be passed. e6 is on board, b3, it's a big race, king d3, dual purpose behind that. He's looking to hunt down this pawn. He's there to now, the rook on e1 is there to facilitate the e7 advance. Bishop stops that. White gets rolling with another pass pawn, h4, a4, it's a big race, g5, h takes g, a3, king c3, and with that last move, we had resignation. Anand resigns this one, and with that, Magnus Carlsen defends his title, 2014 World Chess Champion. There's nothing to do here. This pawn is attacked. There's not a good way to defend him. King a4 is met with rook e4, check. There goes the b pawn. These guys still live. If he's ever taken, this guy pushes right through. Not a good move here for Team Black. Playing b2, multiple good moves here. Here's one of them, king to b3. King to c2 is fine as well. Pick your favorite way to do it. The king is going to be around to restrain these two pawns from advancing. And again, it was at this point, after a very dynamic game, another Berlin defense. After king c3 at this point, Anand resigns. And again, at this point, Carlsen, with that win, has achieved the 6.5 points, the required 6.5 points to become champion. Final tally, 6.5 to 4.5. My voice continues to wear, and it can use a break. Just a couple quick things to say. Thank you very much to those who have been tuning in. There has been a lot of attention to the posts that I've been making, and thanks for following along with the live stream. I hope you enjoyed it along the way, and not sure what more to add besides I think this was a fantastic match, much better than 2013, much more closely fought. Congratulations to both Viswanathan and, of course, Magnus Carlsen on becoming world champion. So that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed the coverage, and maybe I'll be around again to cover next World Chess Championship. So that's all for now, and as always, I hope you got something out of this video. Take care.